Everyone, so we're going to be working on this Honda Odyssey. It seems to be okay for now, but sometimes when it's warm, that pinion gear doesn't seem to release and it overruns, and sometimes it gets stuck. So as a precaution, we'll be pulling it out and investigating as to what the problem is. I've already checked the battery. It's got a brand new battery and the battery has got a good state of health. So the SOC is good. So if you're doing a similar job, make sure your battery is in good condition before attempting to remove the starter motor and claim, and before saying that the starter motor is faulty, because it could be a battery fault as well. So just keep that in mind. So we'll go ahead and start pulling it out. So the main tools we're going to need is a 1/2 inch 10mm and a 12mm, and we'll need spanners and a few bits and pieces. Foremost, we'll start by disconnecting the battery because we're going to be working on the electrical system of the vehicle, so always keep that in mind. If you have any radio codes or anything, make sure you save it before disconnecting up the battery. Next, we'll go ahead and take the top cover off. It's just clipped in place here. It's got these grommets here, and so it screws in over here and it clips in there, so it's got that rubber grommet, just pops it up. So this particular one has got a split manifold design, so it's accessed by these bolts over here. Some of the other models have a one-piece manifold, so that means you'll have to remove everything including the injectors. If that's in, it just pulls out this way. This one, since it's split, it's a bit quicker and easier to remove, so we'll go ahead and remove it. There's bolts all around here, as you can see, and I'll just take this intake pipe off as well. Just 10 more hose clamp here, 10 more here, and then just unclip this, and then this will pop off. I've gone ahead and removed the complete intake box. It just clips off, fairly straightforward. So you just undo that one clamp over here and then just open that and pull the pipe off. So it gives us a bit of extra room. So what we'll be trying is opening up the bolts here, and I'll try and pull it forward and just see, so I don't have to remove the coolant lines or any other pipes around that area. So I'll try that first. I'll go ahead and remove what I can, and then I'll explain what the process is or what the findings are. So now we've got the intake manifold off. As you can see, I pulled off the 4 bolts on the throttle body because it's got coolant lines on it, so I didn't want to touch that. So if you're taking it off, these are the amount of bolts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So make sure you got 6 over here, and then you got one big 12 that holds it down to the gearbox side. So don't forget that bracket over there, and then the pipes around here, which just clips off, and then you got one main connector over here, which is just bolted onto the manifold, which you remove off with 10mm, and then you disconnect this whole loom from that side, and then that gains you access to the starter motor, which we'll remove now. So we'll remove the sensor wiring or the switch wiring over here at the top, and be careful of the knock sensor over there. Be very careful. I've got another video on how to replace that if you need to see it. I'll put it down in the description below, but be very careful of that. We'll go ahead and pull off all these connectors, and if you haven't already done, just make sure you disconnect the battery. So you just need a 14mm socket to remove. There's a long odd bolt at the back over there, and then you've got the standard bolt over there, which is a 17. So there's a 17 and a 14 at the back. That long bolt there. So I'll go ahead and disconnect all the wiring, and don't forget the last bit, which is the electrical connection over there, the 12, just to disconnect that lug off it. When it comes time to removing the knock sensor connector, use some lubricant and make sure you spray it. That's a top tip I can give you, because that's how you can easily break the knock sensor. So just spray some lubricant on the connector, and then you can pull it off easily. So like I said, just be very careful of the knock sensor. So this is the starter motor, and this is the part number of it. So hopefully you can see this now. I've just stripped the motor just to investigate and see what the problem is. Have a look at the brushes over here. This one's almost failed. There's barely anything left, so that's why sometimes it doesn't operate properly. These brushes are okay, but this one has failed quite badly. So if you were rebuilding this, you could just change the brush back, but for what it's worth, you can just, these starter motors are easy to get, so we'll just be replacing this with a new one. So just by hitting it, that releases in there. Once that's released, you have access to the plunger setup, the internal spring, and this whole assembly, which we'll be removing and discarding because this whole brush pack assembly will be replaced. So if you want to take notice, that's how the plunger is set up in there to the contactor. It's similar, the design is quite similar to the Prado, the KZJ95, the starter motor rebuild with the plunger setup. So to separate this just pops out from here. Just like so, it pops out from there. Take note if you want, so that's how that pops out there. The main planetary gear. Just take note of that, and now we've got the little sun gears as we refer them to. Just over there. So what we'll do now is we'll set this assembly aside because the replacement, I believe, comes with the whole plate. But once I get the replacement, I'll show you that and the reassembly part. Now you can just go ahead and clean all these parts. This is not a high kilometer vehicle, so this doesn't need massive amounts of cleaning. There's internal springs in there. Let's turn on the light so you can see that over there. So these springs there, and over there. So just be careful of that, don't lose that. And there's also a center collar piece in there as well. Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and clean all the parts. So I've just gone ahead and removed the springs. I'll just clean it up here because the brush material is basically gone in there as well. I'll just use a rag and just go ahead and just clean everything, and then I can re-grease it. But if your one is really bad, then you'll have to strip it internally. Otherwise, just use a rag and you can just clean it up that way. For the rest of the parts over here, inspect your commutator. Just make sure it's in good condition. If not, then you'd opt for a new starter motor, or if you are not comfortable doing this sort of work, just get a new starter motor, it'll be easier. But we'll just run some sandpaper around this whole commutator and clean up the grooves as I've shown in my other videos as well. But this one's in good condition. So I'll just go ahead and clean all the parts. And if you really want, you can use a little bit of brake clean on a rag and just clean up the areas, but I prefer not to. Most of it's pretty good. Just in here, you want to clean up all the carbon from the brushes. You can see there's a lot of buildup in there. So you want to make sure you clean up all of that. That's very important. Just any of the carbon, that's basically what you want to clean off. So I'll go ahead and do that off camera, and then when it comes time to reassembly, I'll show you everything. And the reason why cleaning all these gears is because of the carbon that has broken down. Just in case the carbon has gone between the gears or where it contacts any of the other parts. And I'll go ahead and clean each gear tooth as well. I'm just using some 100 grit sandpaper. Just clean up the commutator as discussed. Just go ahead and clean a bit more, then we'll clean inside each of the grooves once it's fully sanded. So just using a small little screwdriver type blade, and I've got a flat head screwdriver. I'll just go ahead and clean all the grooves up here. And then I'll use compressed air to go ahead and clean everything off. So this is the new replacement brush pack from the old one. As you can see here, the springs are unloaded, which means we'll push it down later and load it onto the commutator. I'll show you that after. That's the part number if anyone needs it. I don't know if it's of any help, but it's S17816. So we'll be using lithium grease to grease up all the parts. Just put a little bit, you don't want to put too much. basically all the moving parts is what we're going to be greasing. Grease that, grease all the gears, so the planetary gear set and everything, grease that all up. Then you want to grease up the teeth. But just grease the springs to install it. As I've shown in my other videos, the grease assists to hold it in place. The kit came with springs, but they're the incorrect size. So we'll just be using the original springs. I will assemble the plunger setup. Now we'll drop the contactor in. So notice you can follow the old one, the old design, and it just, we pop the spring in as per here. The spring is there. Then we have the spring lock clip, which goes into the groove at the top. So I've gone ahead and locked the spring in place, just for reference in case anyone needs to see it. It was just a 7mm socket that I used. I just put it in the vise. If you don't have a vise, you can just tap it in, and that's installed in there now. As you can see, it's, hopefully you can see that it's locked in the groove all round, and you can test it by pulling it down at the bottom. So now we'll move on to putting the collar piece. So now I've installed the sun gear. So if you remember how I removed it previously, the plate goes down to the bottom, and then the sun gear, so the planetary gear set goes into the plastic housing. and now it attaches this way. That's how it attaches there. So then you've got your one integral unit, then you've got your main piece that slides onto the plunger. Okay, with that a little bit greased up in there. There's only one way you can put it onto this plunger over here. This clips into place, and then you'll have to pull it up, and then it pops down there and there. You can add a little bit of grease there, it won't hurt, just a little tiny bit. That slots in there, so then that completes this part of the job. So this is one complete unit now that's ready to go back in the housing. And we must not forget this collar piece. And in case you're wondering which side, the smaller end over here goes into the spring end over here, and then the larger end goes into the gear side over here into the bendix. So hopefully you can see that the larger side goes in there. That basically, when you activate the starter, it just pushes that out. So hopefully you could see that. So now we'll go ahead and slot that in. Now notice the springs are back in place as well. We'll keep this upright, and we have to install this. It only goes in one way, so I'll take it to the vise and go and install it. So I've gone ahead and got it installed there. So just take note and just see how far it's gone down. It's pretty important. So if I bring it in closer, you can see there's a little lip here, and it's pushed right down. You'll hear it click, an audible click, and you know it's working. And you can test the bendix by pulling it down. So now that we've got that side of things installed, so we'll go ahead and install the new rubber boot back in place. Now that we got the rubber boot installed as well, go ahead and slot in the commutator. Might have to push the brushes back. As far as they can go. So you have to go in there and just try and push each brush back as far as you can, as far as it goes. So now I went around with the screwdriver through each groove and just pushed it back. Now that it's pushed back, just check and make sure it spins. You can move the gear as well, make sure that spins here. And once you're happy with that, then you can go ahead and push these springs back down. So using your larger screwdriver, just push it down like so. So go ahead and do them all round. That loads up the brushes. So we're going to go ahead and install the stator. Now you have to be very careful and put force onto the commutator while the stator has been dropped, because it wants to try and pull it up. Right now it's trying to pull it up. So I've gone ahead and greased the bearing at the back there. I'd already pre-marked it, so we know exactly where to line it up. Just over there. That locks into there. And take note, there was also a connector, a plastic connector bracket. I also marked that, so then this lines up with that on that side. Got the positive and negative running here, and then I'm just using a single cable that goes to the single lug there just to jump the solenoid. So now we got the starter motor in the vehicle. I'll just slot it in. Just reverse the removal. So everything is put back together now. As you heard it before, it started well, and now the starter motor sounds significantly healthier. It doesn't lag and it doesn't struggle anymore. So that was the correct diagnosis that we found on the vehicle. So everything's gone back and tightened up together. All the connectors are put back in place. All the bolts are torqued down. 22 Newton meters, like I said, on the intake manifold. Torqued down the throttle body. And now the final touches are, we'll just put the cover back on and we're good to go from there. So I hope this video was of some help to you. If it was, please do like and subscribe.